Welcome to my final project for Communications 2016 Intercultural Communications. Today I will be answering the question, what is culture, through my research of 4 different subjects. They are major events that changed culture, museums that I visited that I feel demonstrate culture, a TV series that I watched that show how people are impacted through culture, and the last is a survey that I did through Facebook and a Survey Monkey that shows what culture means to people. The first thing I would like to address are the major events that I felt changed culture as a whole. I chose 3 different major events. The ping pong table tennis championships of 1970, the meeting of President Richard Nixon and Chairman Mao Zedong of 1972, and the September 11, 2001 attacks. The first event that I felt really changed how we thought as a culture was an event that I have never heard of, but has had a very significant impact on both China and the United States. It was the ping pong diplomacy, an event where the American team had been cordially invited to play at the championship games after 22 years of silence between the two world powers, the United States and China. Now for this event, I read a book by Nicholas Griffin called Ping Pong Diplomacy, and it tells the story of Ivor Montagu and the astonishing story behind the game that changed the world. What I took from this book was that the Chinese participation in table tennis championships constituted an opportunity to make a direct contact with the Americans, which I stated before has not been heard of for 22 years. And what's more is that this also happened near the end of the Cold War. I would like to add a quote that sheds some more light on this from Nicholas Griffin, and he writes, "At the time, so stated, a new chapter has been opened in the relations between our two peoples. Your visit to China has opened the door to friendly contacts between our two countries. We believe that such friendly contacts will be favored and supported by the majority of the two peoples." As a result of this table tennis championship games, the ice that was between the two nations was thawed enough to where it would lead to the next event of the meeting of President Nixon and Chairman Mao. The second major event I felt changed culture was the meeting of President Nixon and Chairman Mao Zedong in 1972. For this event, I decided to read the book called The Week That Changed the World, Nixon and Mao by Margaret Macmillan, who was also the author of New York Times best-selling author of Paris 1919. In her book, she describes and explains how through President Nixon's visit, the United States was able to glimpse a bit of what communist life was like, but they also received a clear message from China at the same time. The visit was entirely political, but the results changed the way Americans viewed their neighbors across the Pacific Ocean. There are 3 main things that I would like to address from this book. The first is, it was the first time a U.S. president had visited China since the communist government under Mao Zedong had taken over. Second, it marked a significant thawing in hostility between the two nations and offered the Americans a chance to exploit the enmity between the USSR and China. Last, it presented opportunities to the Chinese leadership, which was isolated and keen to develop more normal relationships with the USA. I would also like to add that one of the main reasons why Nixon visited China was to convince China to not side with Russia. I would also like to reinforce the fact that as a result of this meeting between the two leaders of the world powers, the resumption of harmonious relationships between the US and China continued. Commonly known as 9/11, I felt that the attacks of the World Towers on September 11, 2001 was a pinnacle of how culture suddenly changed. Ever since 9/11, the atmosphere changed from the US feeling safe to being scared that a Muslim terrorist group would attack. As a result, security changed to be tighter. The views about Islam and Muslims became associated with fear and distrust. And from that came the stereotype that all Muslims were evil and had to be unchained. Having been on the island of Taiwan at the time, I wasn't there to personally see the United States change culture again. The two things I would like to make known about this event is, for the first time in history, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, otherwise known as NATO, invoked Article 5, allowing its members to respond collectively in self-defense, and on October 7th, the U.S. and allied military forces launched an attack against Afghanistan. It also resulted in the U.S. response to capture the Taliban city. It was also the cause for President Bush's successor, to send the secret team to go assassinate Osama bin Laden. I also feel like this also changed the views of many American people and how they viewed different countries like Afghanistan and Iraq, and that many of them view that they are not an enemy and not someone that we should trust. Moving on from the events that changed the world culturally, I would like to take you to places that I felt demonstrate culture here in Taiwan. The first of two museums that I would like to show you is the Lin and Tai Ancestral House. And this house is located in Taipei City. It's an ancestral house that was built during the Qing Dynasty. Now, because of the way that it has been preserved, the house was turned into a museum, and it's a good example of the architecture of the houses that were built during this time. I would like to quote from the website, which states that the house is of the Southern Fujian style architecture, which incorporates courtyards, woods, and gardens that are all about being natural and shaped to embody the pristine elements. I would also like to add that this type of style would also reinforce the Taiwanese beliefs of harmony and things like that. Here are a couple of pictures that were taken by my mom, and this shows us standing inside the ancestral house on the left, and on the right is another picture of what the ancestral house looks like. And as you can see, as more generations come, the more they build onto the house. The second museum that I would like to show you is called the National Palace Museum. And this is a unique museum because this museum was built just shortly after the Cultural Revolution of the Republic of China. The National Palace Museum is located in Taipei, near the Lin and Chai Ancestral House. I'm not quite sure if I pronounced that correctly. But we also visited that museum during the time when my sister and my brother-in-law came to visit. I felt that this museum was a good choice because it does a good job of showing what culture was like at the very beginning and then how it gradually changed. Another point I would like to add is that many of the relics that are in this museum, as I've stated before, is from the Republic of China during the time of the Cultural Revolution. And as a result, a lot of the relics here show a time where people valued different things and how they suddenly changed. I just thought that this was really important to show because it also demonstrates what people behave and how they feel and how they act today here in Taiwan. Now you might think this is a strange TV series to choose as my source for showing how culture impacts a person. Let me explain. I felt that the TV series Sherlock by BBC was an excellent choice because of the title character Sherlock. In Sherlock, you can immediately see that the title character is a very antisocial, anti-human type of person. He only changes his character with the help of his friends, Dr. John Watson, Watson's wife, Mary Watson, Inspector Drake Lestrade, and the landlady, Mrs. Hudson. Throughout the series, Sherlock gradually changes into a kind of man who looks out for friends. You will also see that John does his best to teach Sherlock about being human and how culture doesn't view him very fondly because of the way he acts. As a result, I feel like Sherlock is a perfect example of anti-intercultural communication, who gradually turns into one by the influence of Dr. John Watson, as I said before, along with his friends Mary and Mrs. Hudson. The last thing I did to compile all of my research was doing a survey on culture through a website called surveymonkey.com. I was able to send this survey to other people on Facebook and see how they reacted to the questions that I posted on it. There are three main facts that I learned from doing the survey. The first was that the majority of them said that Christmas was their favorite holiday. Second was that culture was a group of people with beliefs, ideas, and practices. And the third is that we communicate in our culture verbally. I thought this was very interesting because of the formula that we learned that said only 33% of our communication was verbally. And from the survey that I did, many people said that we communicate in our culture verbally. However, I would like to point out that a lot of them also said that we did communicate non-verbally through hand gestures and other examples. So that's the result of all the research that I did. I had a fun time doing this project, and I thought it was really cool in how people respond in a culture and how we view culture and things like that. So thanks, and I hope you enjoyed this PowerPoint.